In her novel, Beloved, Toni Morrison wrote, "Definitions belong to the definers, not the defined. Palestinians have learned the hard way that unless we clearly define ourselves, our oppression, and our aspirations, the hegemonic oppressor will do it, dehumanizing us, demonizing us, erasing our history and our present to make it easier to eliminate us. We refuse to be defined, and we refuse to be confined by our oppressor to the mortifying choice between being uprooted, subjugated, or annihilated." In the face of the world's first televised genocide, Palestinians are not begging the world for charity. We're calling for meaningful, impactful solidarity, and before both, we are demanding ending complicity as a profound ethical obligation. Israel's current genocide against 2.3 million Palestinians in the besieged and occupied Gaza Strip is armed, funded, and shielded from accountability by a colonial, hypocritical Western establishment, governments, corporations, and institutions, creating a new paradigm where might makes right prevails, unmasked and uncontrolled by international law or moral principles. This establishment has actively amplified Israel's dehumanization and demonization of indigenous Palestinians, waging a wave of McCarthyite repression and silencing of voices defending Palestinian lives and rights. This level of complicity, coupled with the fact that you live in this quasi-democracy, underline quasi, makes it ethically obligatory to act within one's community, organization, union, or other domain of relative influence to ensure accountability at two levels in order to end complicity. Accountability from above, which is enacted by policymakers only when they must, due to a critical mass of pressure from below, of people power. And accountability from below, which is enacted by individuals and collectives by ending all forms of complicity with the system of oppression. The most principled and impactful form of solidarity is BDS, and I'll get to that in a minute. The unprecedented grassroots solidarity pressure globally has significantly increased the isolation of the US-Israel genocidal axis. Social, racial, climate, gender, LGBTQI+ justice movements, trade unions, progressive Jewish partners, academics, artists, students, writers have all mobilized like never before to stop the genocide, but have yet to reach that critical mass of people power. But even when we do, and we force Israel to permanently stop bombing our people in Gaza, this would not end the genocide. It would deem it less visible. Israel's use of starvation as a weapon of war, as affirmed by Oxfam, the spread of infectious diseases, thirst, and deprivation of life-sustaining conditions will exacerbate Israel's ongoing Nakba. So what can be done? To push for a ceasefire, lifting the siege and ending oppression, we need to shift the narrative and end complicity. The former entails countering the lies and dehumanization of Palestinians. For instance, since October 7th, much of the mainstream Western media will tell you at least 18,000 Palestinians, including more than 8,000 children, have died in Gaza. But our children, women, and men did not just die of some natural disaster. They were massacred by the most unnatural disaster, Israel's genocidal war. If you fail to name the crime and shame the criminal, you perpetuate impunity. Western powers have defended Israel's right to self-defense against what they've called an unprovoked attack by Palestinian armed groups. Here are 5 ethical considerations to refute this narrative. 1, in any situation of oppression, where you start the timeline of violence reveals a lot about your moral compass. As the Brazilian philosopher Paulo Freire writes, quote, with the establishment of a relationship of oppression, violence has already begun. Never in history has violence been initiated by the oppressed. Violence is initiated by those who oppress, who exploit, who fail to recognize others as persons, not by those who are oppressed, exploited, and unrecognized, end of quote. The reaction of the oppressed, whether one considers any aspect of it morally or legally justifiable or not, is always just that, a reaction to the initial violence of the oppressor. Understanding the context and causes of resistance does not entail accepting any specific tactics. 2, well before October 7th, Israel's far-right government, its most racist, fundamentalist, sexist, homophobic ever, had been ruthlessly escalating its ethnic cleansing, siege, pogroms, incarceration, and daily humiliation of millions of Palestinians everywhere. As affirmed by the International Court of Justice in 2004, the UN Charter does not give Israel, as an occupying power, the right to self-defense using military means against the Palestinian people under its occupation. Moreover, the Genocide Convention does not allow for any justification to perpetrate genocidal acts. International law actually recognizes the right of all peoples resisting foreign occupation and colonization to resort to armed struggle. However, the use of force against civilians is strictly prohibited, and this is something the BDS movement adheres to. 4, regardless, condemning, and this is an important point, especially for white Western politicians, condemning any illegal or immoral acts of violence that the oppressed may commit in resisting oppression is ethically acceptable only if the condemning party has earned the moral standing to do so by having already condemned the prevailing system of oppression, the initial violence. Five, since oppression is the root cause of violence, those of us who sincerely care about ending all violence must act to end Israel's 75-year-old regime of settler colonialism and apartheid. This begins with ending complicity. Launched in 2005 by the absolute majority in Palestinian society, the BDS movement is led by the largest coalition in Palestinian society. It is inspired by the South African anti-apartheid struggle, by the US civil rights struggle, and it's rooted in a century of Palestinian popular resistance. It aims at ending Israel's occupation and apartheid and the right of Palestinian refugees to return. BDS is consistently intersectional. It rejects all forms of discrimination and racism, including anti-Semitism. There is nothing Jewish about Israel's ethnic cleansing, land theft, apartheid, or genocide. Therefore, there's nothing anti-Jewish per se in supporting BDS to end these crimes and the structure of oppression that perpetrates them. BDS recommends the following peaceful forms of advocacy and mobilization to end complicity peacefully and strategically. 1, pressure policymakers to endorse a comprehensive arms embargo on Israel. Ban the import of products of companies operating illegally in the occupied Palestinian territory. And withdraw all UK investments from companies implicated in illegal settlements. 2, Support peaceful disruptions, sit-ins, occupations targeting government buildings, as well as corporate enablers of genocide and apartheid, especially arms manufacturers, investment firms, and institutions, media, universities, and cultural spaces that may be complicit. 3, support declaring your community, union, cultural space an apartheid-free zone, refusing to accept funding, institutional relations, or sponsorship from Israel or its complicit institutions. 4, support trade unions blocking or disrupting arms shipments to Israel. 5, escalate strategic boycotts and divestment campaigns targeting companies that are complicit in Israeli crimes. Just yesterday, the German sporting giant Puma announced it will not renew its contract with the Israel Football Association following a 5-year global BDS campaign that has cost the company dearly. Of course, Puma says it has nothing to do with politics, it's all economics. Of course it is. That's how BDS works. And this should teach a lesson to many other corporate criminals, many of them in this country. 6, help pressure city councils, universities, churches, cultural institutions to adopt procurement and investment guidelines that exclude companies implicated in grave human rights violations anywhere. So we cannot push for Palestine-specific resolutions in universities and in city councils. Let's push for a general guideline to exclude all oppression, and then we can go with our list of companies involved in Israel-specific oppression and call for excluding them. To close, when you feel overwhelmed by their McCarthyite repression, please remember, here, they try to silence you with intimidation, anti-democratic legislation, and character assassination. In Palestine, Israel tries to silence us with bombs, bullets, and bulldozers. Yet, we steadfast, we resist, and we insist on our full menu of rights, as Desmond Tutu once put it. If you hate violence, end oppression. If you hate oppression, end complicity. If you love freedom, justice, dignity, and equality for all, as we do, end all business as usual with Israel's system of injustice. But for now, we need your full and urgent support to help stop the genocide. Too many lives, livelihoods, and the very definition of human rights hang in the balance. Thank you.